neighborhood and of its people who did not want to go.
I don't want no money. I want my home. The old man is old. See how the old man is old? No more. That's enough. I don't want to get out. I said to my two daughters, they don't want to get out because they spend a lot of money. Plenty of money they spend in this place. Do not get nice to nobody. Never.
Hi, welcome to the West End Video Newsletter. Tonight's show is going to be about the black community in the West End. Now, some people think there wasn't any black community in the West End, or that if it was, it was so small. I have two people here. I asked that, I don't know, were you born in the West End? Or did you guys live in the West End? You know, because the city of Boston doesn't think we had any black people there, so I'm just wondering where you came from.
I lived on 212 Chambers Street.
Which is strange. Most people don't realize that the West End had a black community. I mean, when they write about it now, they sort of, there is really not a lot of mention. They mention it back in the, historic fact about the old days, but, 1958, when they were tearing it down, nobody really, it's like they just don't mention it. And we are trying, and this is what Richie is doing, and I commend him, because I really do. He's put a lot of work into it. He's developing a collection of pictures of black people in the West End, and there's quite a few of them. And I just want to say this: the city of Boston's fair housing people who told me that we didn't have blacks in the West End, that they should look at this show. maybe they can learn a little bit. Richie, name some of the black families that lived in the West End.
Well,
or people you knew and were hanging around with.
This is Paul Ross.
Yeah, Paul Ross. One of 26 kids.
Yeah, right.
26.
Yeah. 26.
And he lived in Spring Street.
That's right. Sold papers, huh?
Sold papers.
Right outside his door.
And this is Pineapple Stevenson.
Oh, that's, yeah, I guess,
Wesley.
well, anybody that's of our age, or, maybe even like 10 or 15 years, 20 years younger, knows Pineapple Stevenson.
Sir.
I mean, because he was a very colorful person.
Right.
Now, younger kids, they probably never heard of him, and it's probably passé and everything. But he fought Sugar Hot, who was
Right.
number 9.
Exactly.
And Pineapple had one strange quirk. He didn't train whatsoever. He drank and he did everything. He told his trainer, yeah. And he went. Well, somebody told me this. Now I don't know if this is true or not. You might be able to tell me if it's true or not. That he went into fight Sugar Hot. He was half bombed.
Well, I'm not sure about that.
I don't
all
know
I know
myself.
is that he had a blood clot. And I don't think he was supposed to fight.
He didn't.
I don't think he was supposed to fight.
Yeah, I don't. Where he got the blood clot was not with Sugar Hot. That was not the fight.
No.
Yeah.
And plus he got shot.
Yeah. Oh yeah, way back.
And they couldn't take the bullets out.
In fact, he got shot with a 45, if I remember right.
Exactly.
Just holes.
Yeah.
Make big holes.
Yeah. And he had a large family. His brother Randy.
Yeah.
His mother Minnie.
Yeah.
His sister Mickey. His Anna Kay.
Yep.
And Rhoda.
Anna Kay has been on the show more than once.
And Rhoda.
Oh.
Yeah.
His sister Rhoda.
Well, Junior was, if you look at Junior, he didn't. Wesley.
I couldn't get Junior out.
Yeah, Wesley was built.
Very strong,
Strong.
very muscular.
Junior was very thin and lanky, right? And he didn't look like, but Junior had a punch like a mule.
Yeah, I heard he could hit harder than Pineapple.
Right.
Well, Junior when he was in the ring, he was doing okay when he was throwing the punches.
Like getting back.
When he got hit, he wanted to take the guy outside. Fight him outside. That was Junior's.
That was the problem.
But he was a real tough kid, though.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. That I know.
Now, mind you, I had to go to a couple of churches to get these people.
Yeah.
Paul Ross, he was in church.
Paul Ross is a minister, right? Is that true, or is that?
No, I don't think so. He goes to church. He goes to his sister, Edie.
Mm-hmm.
Now she's they call her Mother Ross at one of the churches.
This is Paul Ross.
Right.
And Paul is. I remember Paul because when we were kids in the West End, now everybody was poor, right? I'll tell you the story. He came up to me one time and he says, "You're rich. I said, Rich! What do you mean? Now, you got to remember, this Paul's got 26, you know, there's 26 kids in his family. He says, I said, how am I rich? He says, well, you always got cigarettes and a clean shirt. So I guess, you know, everything is relative when you're, you know, when you he used to play 8,000 numbers, too.
Well, he used to sing like Frankie Lane. He used to love Frankie Lane songs.
Yeah, that's right.
You know,
He used to go
like
down
3
the
in the
street.
morning.
Yeah, 3 in the morning. Yeah, right.
Paul Ross was really good to me in that, if you probably remember, he used to sell newspapers also.
Right.
Yeah, right outside his house. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But what happened was is that when I was about 12 or 13, he decided not to sell them, and I took over his paper room.
Oh, okay.
That was my first job in the West
Yeah.
End. On Chambers Street, I sold at the corner.
Oh, okay.
of Chambers and Green, I think. it
Chambers
was.
and Green, yeah.
Right at that corner.
Yeah.
Right,
So I'll
I
always
that.
remember him.
Yeah. And Paul was funny.
Now he had a big fire on.
Oh, the
Spring
house
Street.
did, yeah.
The house.
Yeah,
He lost.
somebody died there, right?
That's it.
Yeah, I think Edie lost a child there.
Yeah. Yeah,
And he made a decision whether to save Dell
yeah,
or,
that's right.
and that's why I think he went to church.
Matter of fact, Anna Kay lost the kid in the fight,
Yes.
too.
Exactly.
I remember that day. It was one of the saddest things I can remember because...
That was on Brighton Street.
on Brighton Street, right.
Yeah.
The house was all boarded up, and Anna Kay, you know, came down the street and go, you know, because we knew that, you know, and she was banging on the doors. Holy shit. Oh, my God. You know, it was really,
Yeah.
it was really what, you know, those moments that you see, you know, that's really sad, you know, and it hit you. And that was, and it stuck in my brain. That was one of them.
Now,
Yeah.
another on Spring Street was Lillian
Mm-hmm.
and her sister Jane.
Yeah.
Rudy.
Hold on, Rich, so that...
Yeah, Rudy lived there.
Yeah.
Now, Corinne and Rico, they lived on
Rico.
Phillip Street.
Yeah, that's right, up the hill.
And Elizabeth Moore, she
Right.
lived on Grove Street.
Yeah, well, I hung around with Sonny for a lot of years. I didn't realize he was black.
Yeah.
You know, I hung around with him because if I knew there were blacks in the West End, there were... Yeah.
There was Gertrude
Yeah.
and her sister Winnie.
Yeah.
They lived on Phillip Street.
Elizabeth is a really fine person. I mean, Sonny is too. The whole family was. And I'm not trying to, you know, say Elizabeth's a good person and everybody else isn't. She goes to. She's not Catholic, and she goes to the, you know, the West End Mass. She shows up there, and to her it's more of, you know, a meeting of people she hasn't seen in a long
yes,
time.
right.
Oh, yeah.
And she's a lovely person, great person. She's a little sick right now. She has a condition, but she's a great person, and I really like her. And Sonny too. I hung around with Sonny for a lot of years, and we went to a lot of strange places.
Well, I remember Eldie more because he was the basketball player. I remember when I was at the West End House, I played for the junior, whatever
Right.
it was, the younger ones, and Eldie was a really good basketball player for the West End House.
Exceptional.
Exceptional, right.
And I've had Ray Flynn on this show more than once, probably about 4 times overall, over the 190 shows that we've done, right? And the first thing, when we start talking about the old days, right? And Ray was a basketball player in the settlement houses. He played in the settlement. He played against the West End House, and the first thing he asked me, you remember that tall black guy? He says, Eldie. I said, yeah. And then every time we're on the show, he mentions Eldie.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
so
He was outstanding.
yeah.
Now, on Kennard Avenue, there was Buster Crawford
Oh, yeah.
and his wife Singy. There's a granddaughter, Courtney. Now, Buster had a sister, Esther. There's Bobby Crawford.
Yeah, Bobby.
Kennard Avenue was Sonny Chandler, also a good fighter.
Yeah.
Lester Chandler.
Oh, yeah. I remember he used to come from the gym with the bag every night.
Yeah,
Yeah, he used to always be
excellent
working out,
fighter.
yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me, why'd you start this collection of pictures?
Well, for the simple reason that I was trying to get what we always talked about a reunion,
Yeah.
you know, and I realized that everybody
The
was
black
gone.
community, yeah.
Or they were gone. I mean, and there's still a lot of pictures that I can't get because people had fires, they had floods. There was a lot of the Doc Wilson, for instance.
Oh, Doc, yeah.
We'll never see, maybe, you know,
Yeah. With the hat,
ad
like,
line.
just
Ad
really like
line.
that. Oh, the Doc was tall.
This was in
thin guy.
Poplar Court.
Right, right.
there was a lot of people that, you know, that I won't,
God,
I won't see, or I
Right.
won't have a picture of, because there's not too many people have pictures of them. I had, well, his
I recognize you.
his father and mother,
Yeah.
Tut
Yeah.
and Peggy Johnson,
Yeah.
and his family.
Right. So why do you think this is important to do? I mean, really.
It's important because
You know, it'll give us a history.
there's not too many people know
Right.
that there was a lot of people, a lot of blacks in the West End.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a lot of good memories, you know,
Sure.
of people, and I wanted everybody to know that I had
Mm-hmm.
these people.
And who they are.
And who they are.
And
And I'm still going to try to get more.
yeah.
There's more than, much more.
And I think that's, you know, when you're done, okay, we already have, he has it set up like sort of in a collage on a,
Yes.
on a stand and everything. When it's done, it's going to be a really, I mean, even what we have now, it's a very important asset, okay? And in the future, it's going to be even a more important asset, because
Right.
people will be able, when we're gone, okay, you're not going to be able to come on the show and say, you know, it's important for the black community,
Right.
But
Right.
they can go down there, and they'll be able to see what you've done,
Exactly.
okay, and what you've put together, okay? And in the future, it's more important for the future than it is for today, and it's
Right.
important for today too. I'm not trying to, you know, I'm not making that, you know, lessening that, but it's more important.
Now, take for instance, like Rico.
Oh yeah.
Rico and Corinne, they lost their whole family.
Yeah. Corinne's the only one left, right?
The only
Yeah.
one left.
Yeah.
And these are the people that should be remembered.
Right. That was, well, we went to Rico's wake, right? It was.
I mean, they
Yeah.
treated me like, you know, that I was
Family.
one of the family,
Yeah.
everybody. You know.
Yeah. And you know what? I always mean to. I want to go on to genealogy and trace back Rico, because his name was Mervyn Dow Warren.
Exactly.
Rico?
Rico.
Right.
That's Rico wasn't his name. His real name. We used to call him Mervyn.
Oh, I know he didn't like that, did he?
His real name was Mervyn
Never knew.
Dowd Warren.
Okay.
Right. Down.
That is an old line Yankee name, Dowd and Warren.
I
Are
hear
both
that.
old line Yankee names.
Right.
And I would always like to find out whether, you know, there was something going on in the past, right?
Probably.
You know what I mean? And to try to look it up in the, you know, the genealogy and see, you know, where, you know, the name came from. But Rico's
Well, Rudy's name was Alexander.
is that right?
Alexander Hightower, yeah. Rudy, I don't know how we got. You know, I'm not admitting my name, but Richie will do.
Finding all kinds of things today.
They slide out. The truth will come out.
Well, I guess my mother
surface,
thought we were going to be presidents or something,
Yeah.
you know. These names, you know.
Yeah.
Now, another person on Canard Avenue was Julia Martin.
Yes.
And these are her kids, her husband. They're going to name a building after her now.
I wasn't aware of that, no.
Yeah.
With the building on Bickford Street where
on
she lives?
Bickford Street,
Yes, she's the
exactly.
president of the senior citizens.
Oh, okay. That's what
Where
I was
she
going to ask
lives.
the question. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's the
Yeah, well, that
president.
makes sense.
Very,
Yeah.
very active
Very
in
active.
Bromley Heath.
Yeah.
Good. Well, Bromley Heath used to be a hellhole, wasn't it? I want to. Oh, it was.
Now, here's another person.
It used to be, but they've
Yeah.
really changed it. The Cummings family.
The Cummings, yeah. There's Richie Cummings.
We were very
his
close
wife,
with them.
Ann Cummings.
Mm-hmm.
And these are all his children. This is Canard Avenue right here, this
Right.
building.
Yeah, I remember Canada.
I mean, like
Richie
I said,
Testa lived on Canada.
Richie Testa.
I'm going through
Right next to.
a lot
I used to hang out
to
with
get
him.
these pictures. You know what I mean? I had to go to 3 churches. I gave 3 donations.
Well,
It must have hurt.
you can write it off. Though. It's a tax deductible.
That's right, tax deductible.
Yeah, I mean, I have to wait for the people. You know? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Now this is now here's Corinne and Rico and
Yeah.
his that was Lillian's mother, Pavilla,
Yeah.
and now another one that lived on Poplar Court was Brenda Mahan, Marcia Mahan, Wayne. I can't remember. There's Buddy. There's Ellie, the mother. There's Blanche. Blanche Singleton. They all live.
Yes, I remember. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, on Brighton Street, there was Emmeline, Gladys DeRosa, Charlie DeRosa. Now, these were the Storms. But they
I don't think
they
I
lived
remember.
on Milton Street.
Is that right?
Yeah, this was taken in front of the Salvation Army on Bowden Street.
Yes, okay.
On
yes,
Bowden
I
Street
remember
or the Salvation Army on Green and Leiden?
No, up in Bowden, right in Bowden.
Scully Square.
Yeah,
There it
Scully
is,
Square.
right there.
I used to go to the Salvation Army, yes.
Yeah, remember they had that store too on the corner of...
That was a store. That was
Oh,
the
that was a
Salvation
store.
Army store.
Oh, okay.
Your mother used to teach there. Yes, yeah.
This is my younger brother, Ronald.
Yeah.
My brother Kenny passed away.
Kenny I knew.
Mm.
Kenny I knew. I don't think I know your brother
These
Ronald.
are my twins. I
Yeah.
brought them up, and they was on Grove Street. I used to live there for a while.
Yeah, I remember that.
And this is Charlie, and this is Emmeline's daughter. I caught her at the Salvation Army Church. I had to take that.
Yeah.
Now, this was a picture of, this is Louise.
Yeah.
She lived on Poplar Street.
Right.
Bertha Day lived
She lived
on...
right behind the Clementes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there was Harry the Tailor.
Right,
Right
Clementi.
next, yeah. Now, there's Bertha Day. She lived on Brighton Street.
Mm-hmm.
She had the dog Emperor.
Oh, there was there was 2 of them, Emperor, and there was 2 of them, right? If I remember
Well,
right.
the one that chased Paul Ross was Emperor.
She had those 2 big dogs, right?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
And this is her daughter, Faith.
Yeah.
There's my mother
Yeah.
This is true, yeah.
and Ruth.
Yeah.
Now, Charlie Harding,
I don't think I knew him.
they used to call him Charlie Lover. He was, he lived on, and his kids, Charlotte,
Yeah.
Christy, there's Charlie Jr., and there's Bertha Day and Hervey. They lived on Brighton Street. So,
You know, the reason I found out Paul Ross had 26 kids, I never knew that, but he went to get the draft notice one day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he went up there, and he didn't come back till like about 3 in the afternoon, most people. I said, what, you get drafted? He goes, no. I said, what happened? He says, they gave me, I forgot, they gave him some classification that he wasn't, you know, I don't remember what the classification was.
1Y?
Whatever it was.
Okay.
And he says, they asked me how many kids in my family. He says, and I told them 26.
Right.
They, no, we don't want your cousins and...
Right, just brothers and sisters.
Just your brothers and sisters. He said 26.
I didn't know that.
wow.
And he said, and he went there, and the guy, he says, the guy kept me there at 3 o'clock. He kept asking me these questions and writing things down.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Now, his family is down to 80, and he has another brother in Chelsea. Now, with all the brothers he had,
Yeah,
yeah. So, these are people, and he had a lot of pictures,
yeah,
and he had fire, you know,
yeah,
so...
right.
But I'm still gonna, you know, plug away. Now this is an old. This was. This is Elizabeth Moore, John Moore,
Oh, John died. Which
and
is,
Shirley Richards.
John died young.
And then this is.
John Moore?
This is Corinne.
Yeah.
This is Shirley Richards, Winnie, and Billy. Billy
Down with the
Richards.
Esplanade in the back, yeah.
Yeah.
The shell.
That is Elizabeth and Pat Oliver. Pat Oliver lived on Spring Street.
You know,
This is Paul Smith's. This is Shirley now.
yeah, Sonny Moore used to live on the hill, right?
Grove Street.
And Sonny used to tell me that his father, you know, Palmore, used to
Yeah.
go around and show him where all the Underground Railroad spots were.
Oh, yes,
yeah,
of
he
course.
went around.
Yeah.
You know something about that too, right?
I know, I've read a bit about history of blacks in Boston. West End really was a really very famous community relative to the broad United States, in that, of course, as you said before, it was a poor community, like all of us were
Right.
relatively poor. But a major
Except me,
thing...
I was rich.
Well, that's right, because you
You
had
had a clean
cigarettes.
shirt and cigarettes.
I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
But one of the
Continue.
major themes that was great about the community, talking about back in the
Right.
1800s, was the unity of the community.
Right.
How the community first would go out of its way, the black community, to keep families together.
Right.
That was a major, major theme of keeping families together. And then also the greater extended family, the community, to keep the community unified because of all the pressures and challenges, of course, living in those days. Of course, you know, Massachusetts was was the first state to abolish slavery. So because of that, in getting back to your point about Underground Railroad, many of the fugitive slaves, when they leave down south, would come up here, and Boston was a major point in the West End or Beacon Hill. I always get confused where it ends and where it begins.
Usually considered either Pinckney or Myrtle Street. And if you go up and a lot of people, the north slope of Beacon Hill, which is Myrtle Street
Right,
down,
yes.
was not considered part of Beacon Hill, or Beacon Hill Civic Association did not consider that part of the Beacon Hill till after they tore down the flat.
Oh, okay, I was going to say, because
On Myrtle Street, there's a building, and the cement brick stuck into one of them. It says West End on it.
Yes.
So that was always considered the West End. And there was tenements anyway. The rest of them were all
Right.
colonial houses, but the north slope was tenements.
So blacks in Boston were well known throughout the United States, especially a central, of course, institution was the church. In that, of course, the oldest living church, black church, that's still standing, is still standing up there in Joy Street.
That's right.
Where I went to school, Peter Faneuil School.
That's right.
The first African meeting house.
Right.
And the first black church, I think, was 12th Baptist, started there. Then Charles Street AME broke off.
Right down, okay, yeah.
And they went off and started other churches. But the church was a major location and organization, of course, for the black community, in that, it was one of the few places which we owned. Therefore, it was a place of training where black leadership, there was education. Many of the, I think the first black school was the Smith School. And I think that was the name of it, up there in Joy Street. So that was started by the black church. It was a place where blacks would come for social gatherings, cultural. And the other thing which was very important, I remember this, is that because of discrimination it was during slavery times, blacks were not in positions of power. So what the pastors of those churches would do would train blacks in positions of leadership. You know, the deacons, the officers, the board of trustees, the various women. And that was another area where women were fairly equal in the black community, in the black church, because even today, if you go to church, it's usually about 70% of women. So women were officers and leaders in the black churches, and were very instrumental in the black community. You were talking about blacks in the West End. I traced 4 generations of Johnson, well, not Johnson, but my great-grandmother was born in the West End.
A lot of people don't realize that the blacks in the West End, okay, the North Slope, weren't just people that wrote picking cotton or something.
Oh, no.
They were people that were mainly middle class, and they were like barbers.
Yes, they were.
Used clothing dealers, because in those days
You're right.
you didn't buy a lot of them. There was cooks.
Yes.
You know, and a whole host of them, and they were there. Matter of fact, there was another place. There was another church that I didn't know about, but Frank Levine. You know, Frank Levine does all this research. You know the North Russell Street show.
North Russell Street?
You know the one that was on North Russell Street? There was a synagogue on North Russell
Oh, yeah, a synagogue, yes, okay.
He researched it, right, because Frank's Jewish. And he said, you know what was there before the North
The
Russell
synagogue, yeah.
synagogue? He says it was a black church.
Oh, I can believe that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a black church before. Well, they tore I guess it was a wooden church, and they tore
They
it
all
down, and
wooden.
they built that synagogue. You know, it was all brick,
Brick,
and,
yes.
and granite and everything. It was a nice looking church, nice looking synagogue. Anyway, but that's what Frank told me. And another thing that a lot of people don't realize, I didn't, but I guess you can even go when you go up to the Afro Meeting House. Somewhere in there, there's they had the recruiting office for all blacks. For the, what is the...
Oh, the 54th?
54th.
Oh, yes, the 54th.
That was on the corner
Yes.
of North Russell
Yes.
and Cambridge Street.
Yes, it was. Yes.
And that was where they recruited everybody out of it.
Yes.
And
Now, I knew a lot of blacks on Beacon Hill.
Yeah.
There was the Van Lanninghams,
right.
Joe Jefferson,
Mm-hmm.
oh, geez, the son
Yeah.
and Mrs. Brown on Myrtle Street.
Yeah.
And, I mean, there was a lot of blacks there.
Well, and I was told this. Now, I never verified it myself. Frank told me this. The Episcopalians, they had a nunnery up until 10 years ago, and the Episcopalians had, a convent.
Oh, convent, okay.
Convent up in Louisburg Square up until about 10 years ago or whatever. Matter of fact, someone said that's where John Kerry lives now. He bought the building.
Oh, right.
They sold the building and...
Near Kevin White, huh?
Yeah. Anyways, what I was told by Frank, now I'm not entirely sure, I'm just repeating, it's anecdotal to me as far as I'm concerned rather than empirical, is that the Old West Church was turned into a library for black kids around, in the late 1890s,
Yes.
somewhere in the 1890s.
Yes.
And because the Episcopalians felt that blacks didn't have an opportunity, like, to really, use the library or anything. And eventually, like 4, 5, 6 years later, it was turned on. They opened it as a library for everybody. But that was...
Well, I went there as a child.
Yeah,
I
did too.
remember going, and I do believe that probably did happen. As I said, the AME, African Methodist Episcopal, was a major church. Charles Street, matter of fact, one of the oldest churches in the nation.
Right.
And did a lot of many things. But I want to get back to what Richie's doing, and I really want to congratulate him on
Me too.
gathering these pictures. But that's not the only thing we're planning to do.
Oh, yeah, I know that.
What we've done, and you're aware of, I submitted a little short proposal to the African Meeting House, whereby once we're going to bring these pictures to the executive director, Beverly Morgan Welch, and hopefully we're going to try and do an oral history, and then maybe, if possible, we'll tape before. As Richie said, many of our older West Enders, black West Enders, are dying off. And there has nothing been written, there's much been written about the North Slope, black Bostonians that lived on the North Slope in Beacon Hill. But in the South Slope, there isn't anything written. I called up Dr. Adelaide Hill, who used to be chair of the Boston University African-American Studies Department, Byron Rushing.
Oh, Byron, I know, yeah.
Dr. Horton. These are people who are famous historians about black
Byron has a long
Bostonians.
history in it.
And he said nothing has actually been written. So hopefully we're hoping this will be a catalyst where we can really do an oral history and then maybe write a history about Boston blacks, the South Slope, where we all came from.
Well, we came from the South Slope was the Brahmin slope. North Slope was the Myrtle Street down.
Right.
And then you had the flat.
Right.
We were the flat. Look, we're coming to an end, and it's been a very interesting thing, and maybe we'll do it again when we're, if anything comes to fruition with the Afro Meeting House, right? We'll do another show with the people from the Afro Meeting House. We'll put something out.
Good.
It'll be interesting. It's nice having you two, and I find it very interesting. And see you at the next West End video newsletter.
Thank you for inviting us.
Out of sight, out of mind.
is the story of a lost neighborhood and of its people who did not want to go.
I don't want no money. I want my home. The old man is old. See how the old man is old? No more. That's enough. I don't want to get out. I sent my two daughters. They don't want to get out too because they spend a lot of money. Plenty of money they spend in this place. We not get nice to nobody. Never.
Hi, welcome to the West End Video Newsletter. Tonight we have an old friend back again. I think we did a show about 4 months ago, right?
Yeah.
And I have Ray Flynn back, and we're going to talk about eminent domain. We're going to talk about neighborhoods. We're going to talk about the way things were, politics the way it was, and politics the way it is now, and be a little different show, and we'll just wrap a little bit.
Matter of fact, I think the last time I was here, I just came back from Rome.
Yeah, that's right. The Pope.
I was there 9 weeks covering the both the funeral, the death, the funeral, the conclave of Benedict XVI. I was there 9 weeks. I was working for NBC on 2, 3, 4 times every day. A fascinating experience. It was good to get back to Rome. I had an opportunity to again travel throughout the country and really learn about a lot of different issues.
Now we had a Polish Pope, and now we have a German Pope, and it seems strange, to have a German Pope because everybody not the different ethnic groups, okay, and they're Italians for so many years, and German, nobody ever thought of German, but I understand he's a pretty nice guy anyway.
It's kind of interesting, Jim, because of the fact that we both grew up in neighborhoods, West End, South Boston, but it could be any neighborhood of Boston, North End, Roxbury, where there was such an ethnic presence there, Irish, Italian, Polish, German, Jewish, and we all got to know each other, and we got to know the culture and the traditions and the history. We had a little bit of an understanding of the various backgrounds of people. So in many respects, if you live in Italy, as I did for almost 5 years, you know the Italian culture. If you live in Lithuania, as I visited on a number of occasions, you know the Lithuanian culture. But when you live in places like the West End, or South Boston, or Roxbury, you know everybody's culture. That's the way it is. It's like little UN. So it was fun to see how all the German people came into Rome for the elevation of Benedict XVI, and then as the Polish people did for John Paul II.
And that all changes. Religion changes, politics change, the world changes, and I guess you have no control over that. You just live with it and take what comes, and hopefully it's better when the changes come and mix together. We have the eminent domain decision too that came down. That's just recently. And there's a lot of people that forgot that the West End was one of the first eminent domain projects, and that they tore it down, and it became a landmark. Gans wrote the book Urban Villages, okay, and the West End was the first place that term was ever used, urban villages or urban village. That was coined for the West End. And now everybody's concerned about eminent domain and urban renewal because they've gone so far over the line. They went from public use to public purpose to public benefit. So it's now they can take your house, put a Walmart for extra taxes. It may be salty, they may be taken next.
But here we are. We have the United States Supreme Court coming in, giving more power to city governments to basically do what they did in Boston in the West End, which was a colossal mistake. And but Jim, what they did with